All right, you're recording, Linda, so you're all set.
Okay. Good evening. This open meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and the provisions extended by Chapter 20 of the Acts of the 2021, signed by Governor Baker on June 16, 2021, due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. These provisions suspend the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. I hereby call to order the meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee at 7 p.m. I am Linda Lakoski, Chair of the School Committee, and I would like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Susanna?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paul Goldner?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Caitlin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paul Lees?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Narissa Welland?
I am here and I can hear you.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Brian Forget?
Here and I can hear you.
Kimberly Croto?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Kyle Warren?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Shannon Nolan?
I'm here and I can hear you.
And is Kaylee here too?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. The first thing on the agenda is the chairperson's remark. In regards to the mask guidance, it's a moving target. So we would like to hold off until August 25th to make any decisions on the mask policy. We're going to have our
Data review.
thank you, the data review group. And then we're going to have any guidance that's available to us at that time. So that's when we're going to make a decision on that. We're also going to hold off on our school improvement plan and our district improvement plan until the middle of September, because I believe the August 25th meeting is probably going to be a long one. So try and move things along and to plan out our time, we're going to move that out. That's all I have. The oral communications from the public. Do we have anybody from the public?
We do have a couple, but I don't see anyone turning cameras on or raising a hand. It does not look like it.
Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is staffing proposal for math specialists.
All right, so I'll cue this up, then I'm going to ask Kim to give some explanation. But so this is, I guess I would say this is a continuation of the discussion we had over the budget season. As you know, generally, we don't come to you in the middle of summer proposing staffing changes. We also don't generally have large funds coming from the federal government to help mitigate a pandemic. So this is something we've talked about. And as we've continued to look through the data, as we prepared for summer and the summer programming, and we identified the need, clearly mathematics was an area where we are seeing significant regression with students. So that is the purpose here. I just wanted to acknowledge first that this is not normal, that we would come to you. And I think there's a logical question to be asked. Well, why didn't we ask for this during the budget process? But January, December, a time frame when this all started, February, it was a very different picture. So this is different, and we'll talk through the process, but just wanted to set that scene. So I'm gonna ask Kim to go through the document that was included with the agenda.
Sure, thanks, Brian. So just some background knowledge about the math specialists. We've had math specialists working alongside teachers within the schools for a few years. Eventually, they did get cut because of budget constraints, and we wanted to make sure that we kept class sizes small. And we thought with the new math program, it was kind of around that same time, I would say the second year of implementation, and along with the budget cuts, math specialists got reduced. Since that time, I will say they have been struggling even before COVID, just trying to really have a clear sense of their purpose, because many times they were spread so thin that their impact was limited. They would be either covering classes in a pinch or supporting students who had some specialized instruction that we did not have available for them at the time. So because of that, they really struggled, like I said, because of they didn't have kind of clarity at the building level as their role, and many times they were pulled in different directions. So as over the last few years, especially over the last months, as we're looking at data, I would say more so over the last few months, just because of everything that happened in regards to student learning with the pandemic. Our math scores really were showing that out of all the content areas, math was an area of need. And again, that is not new to the math instructors. They have been saying that for the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years. And so what we have been trying to do, even throughout after the pandemic, although it's still a pandemic, is really look at what's happening in Tier 1 with that. And Tier 1 is obviously the classroom instruction. Also what's happening in Tier 2 as far as interventions. And in Tier 2, that particular tier is really focused on students who might need that instruction given again, or maybe in a different way, or maybe even some preliminary skills addressed prior to that learning to occur. And what we found is that unlike reading, where we had many interventions in place and we had data to review to adjust instruction, we just did not have the depth that we had in math. And so with the previous environment, and then as well as with the new impact of what has happened over the last year or so, the principals and myself, after looking at the data and meeting throughout the year with the math specialists, really said, you know what, we really need to have math specialists increase their time, and we need to do so in a very strategic way, unlike what we did before, where we had a direction for them and we certainly had a purpose, but as struggles came in sight, they shifted their focus. So now moving forward, what we would like to do is have math specialists at a full-time position so that they can really focus in a couple different clearly articulated areas. One would be to support Tier 1 instruction, and that again is with the classroom teacher teaching general lessons and supporting them in their instruction, also with small group instruction that would be occurring in the classroom. So that's Tier 1. The second piece to that is we have purchased over the last, I would say 16 months, new assessments as well as new instructional programs that would support Tier 2. And again, Tier 2 is for those students who are showing early signs of struggle that we want to really get in very early on to intervene. And so those would be the primary role of the math specialist we would increase. We would also be meeting with them regularly as check-ins and collecting data as far as the impact that is happening over the course of the year. We did not have iReady data for the area of math. We did not have that benchmarking system. So that's really going to give us the information that we need to make sure how the math specialists are interacting is actually having an impact on student learning. So really that's the goal, very quick summary of how we would use a full-time math specialist at the elementary level. At the middle school level, that too is true, but there is an additional need that is outside of kind of the response to learning from the COVID experience, where what we have found in the past is, and I think you can see this in the data, is that as students progressed to the middle school, there was really a increase in the number of students who were in that red zone. And you can see that on that iReady report. And so that's concerning for many different reasons. But one of the approaches at the middle school was to pull some of those students out of the mainstream classroom with the goal of providing them very individualized instruction by a special educator. Now, a special educator does not have a specialized license in the area of math. And so what we really need to do is partner up somebody who has that specialized content area with a special educator. Hence, that's kind of the co-teaching model that we're also working to implement the elementary school, but also doing that so at the middle school. And we can't do that without that expertise of that math specialist. What that math specialist provides for those not just the teachers, but the special educators, is really depth of understanding of the vertical alignment of the math standards and how certain power standards build on others. And they can do a really, I think, powerful job in creating lessons that are going to speak to the students' instructional needs. So that's kind of very in a short summary of the situation with the math specialists. Is there any particular parts of that document that people would like me to go over in more detail? I'd be more than happy to.
Can I just add one, just to clarify? So at the elementary, the half-time at each elementary school, and half of the full-time position at the middle school, we are going into this fully understanding that this is a short-term commitment. Will there be a need in the future? There may be, but proposing using ESSER funds, the folks who would be involved in this, so we've already done the prep work and planning to be ready to make some hires. Obviously, we can't decide tonight and hire next week. So all that, the advertising has been done as anticipated openings. We have talked to the existing math specialists. So there's full understanding that this is a short-term commitment. If it does need to be a long-term commitment, then that would be something we would have to address through the regular budget. But as far as mitigating impacts of, we always talk about not using one-time funds to fund long-term general operating expenditures, but there's a significant need here. We do have the funding at this point in time, and the majority of this will be shifting, people becoming full-time, so that lessens the impact of unemployment costs when we hire someone and then let someone go and have them on our unemployment roster. So is there some impact? Yes, there would be some likely potential. But again, the need with the available funds coming through ESSER just simply outweigh, or the need outweighs the potential risks and added costs there.
Does anybody have any questions for Kim? Narissa?
So I have a few. I guess one of the big ones I'm wondering, Kim, is can you kind of describe what this looks like? I'm not, from reading it, I'm not sure. I'm assuming it's pullout services. Is middle school using the G block for that? So this is in addition to a regular math class, or is this a pullout from,
Yeah,
I guess
it's a combination. Yeah, certainly. So it's a combination. So at the middle school, I can tell you right now, there will be, I want to say we highlighted 2 areas where it is a pullout program, and that has been identified through a child's individualized educational plan. So it is a pullout. But again, the goal was to have that be co-taught because it is such a separate program of the mainstream classroom. So that's one element. So there would be 2 classes where that would be happening with that combination. The other piece of it is that because we've seen such a discrepancy in the skill set when they do get up to that middle school, the classroom teacher is having a hard time to instruct at all those levels. So that math specialist would be used within that classroom. And I hate to use the word co-teaching because I feel like in the past that has been rolled out so many times, and it's really been met with resistance, I would say. I would say the culture 100% has shifted in such that, you know, you talk about readiness when you implement something, we're at a different place right now, right? So teachers are 100% open, willing, and we even have a co-teaching professional development set up that's going to be happening at the end of August, where the team of teachers have to be committed, and it's totally voluntary. We're not saying, please go to this and we'll pay you. They've registered on their own for this 3-day course that we're offering at the school, and they've signed up as a team. So I think that's a powerful statement to say, hey, we are ready, and they feel the urgency. Like sometimes when you have to feel that sense of urgency before you get that buy-in. So they're feeling that urgency, especially after this past year, to say, how am I going to address all these different needs and still be able to maintain grade level expectations and standards without going all these steps back. So that's a really challenging act across all grade levels, because what we're learning is that, you know, there are going to be skills that you're not going to be able to follow a scope and sequence and play catch up. It's really about integrating them into the current grade level standards. And how you do that so that kids don't get frustrated is a very delicate act. And that's kind of that area of expertise that's going to happen at that middle school within that co-taught model. So they'll be doing those pullouts for those specialized pieces of it. They'll be doing the push in with the classroom teacher, but they also will be supporting students with interventions during that G block, because there are some kids who are going to have a double dose of math, right? That we see those gaps. And if we just get them a year, we have to make more than a year growth within a year. And there's no way that we can do that without changing the structure and how we actually do things, you know, within the middle school. And at the elementary school, they'll have their win blocks. So they'll be doing interventions. They'll also be doing a lot of that, I'm going to say partner teaching, where it could be the math specialist who is doing the main lesson, and then after the main lesson, they're breaking off into small groups. I will say that over the couple of years, as we've had new teachers come on board, again, I keep saying back, like the readiness and the team approach that I'm seeing because of this whole experience is really putting us in an opportunity to do some of those really great shifts in co-teaching and partner teaching that didn't exist. They realized I can't do this alone. They realized that last year. And so understanding the benefits firsthand and knowing that they're going to have a lot of kids and they're not going to be sure which direction to go gives them this opportunity to do that partner teaching, to do that intervention. I have asked the principals are meeting tomorrow. I want specifically to find out what are the target grades that they're going to be partnering in. And that's going to be based on, again, with the data that we hadn't had in the past. So like we have that iReady data, which we had for reading, which made it much easier to say, okay, you need to go into this second grade class because here we see the widest range of skill sets, and you're going to go here. We're going to do this, and we're going to keep monitoring that. So we'll have that to help guide that process. And so what my goal is then is to continuously meet with the principals and the math specialists, review their established SMART goals, their goals, and then adjust as needed.
Okay. So that sounds great. Actually better than what I was kind of thinking or hoping for. 2 more questions.
Sure.
One was just the group that's conspicuously missing here is the high school. And I understand it's very different because it isn't necessarily a continuous,
Right.
you know, sequence, I guess, that the students are going through there. Is there any additional attention being put on the high school, or are they kind of feeling like they're good to address it on their own?
Right. So they're not heterogeneously matched like they are at the elementary and middle school. So they I hate to say tracking, but they almost start that kind of tracking system as they sign kids up for classwork. I know that within the content areas, so the math content leaders have had discussions about, okay, where will these kids be? And we've talked about giving them some pre-assessments, but they feel that they have the background knowledge because they do tend to shift and teach different level classes and kind of that range of knowledge to address those needs as they come forward.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And just the last question, which I think you kind of answered, it in the documentation for middle school, it talked about funding half of the middle school position from ESSER and half from the contingency, salary contingency.
Yeah.
But then you just said something about like what the long term could be for that. Are you thinking that the long term might only be the half that's covered by the salary contingency? Or are you thinking that stays a full-time position, or do you just
Yeah, I think at this point, like I would not want to invest funds in something that is not going to be working, right? So I don't have that crystal ball to say, yes, this is definitely going to be needed full-time all the time. I don't know. Like I would rather say, okay, here's our plan, here's our goals, here's how we're going to measure our goals. And then at the end of this 3 year, when that funding source disappears, to say, I want to come back to you and say, this is the impact of having math specialists, and I have the data to back this up. Like that's my hope. I would say though that if we still have a large number of students, and that changes year, that if they need a pull-out program and that is on their grid, on their individualized educational plan, that math content cannot be delivered by just a special educator, because in the eyes of the Department of Ed, they don't have that specialized content license, which then creates some equity issues, right? So why does my child going to be taught math with a non-licensed math teacher when this one can? I want to have that same experience. So that really brings in that, is that really, equitable? And we want to make sure that all the students have access to that specialized math content teacher. So
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. That was all the questions I had.
Does anybody else have any questions? I have a question. Prior to the pandemic, the MCAS scores for math were low anyways. So I'm pretty sure that with the pandemic, it has really caused the students to not be doing well in math. I'm an advocate for co-teaching, as you know, Kim. I've always spoke to you about it. And I'm thinking that after the 3 years, that if we have the right math specialists teaching our teachers and the ones who are going to be co-teaching, I think we may not have an issue with funding, because if we have the right math specialists, they will teach those teachers to help the students. And I think it's a great opportunity for the teachers to do that. I've seen co-teaching work, and I've seen it work very, very well. If you get the special education teacher and the regular teacher working together, it would be amazing to those students.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy to hear that that is the direction that we're going in.
Yes. Yep. And I would say that, again, there has been so many negative things with COVID, obviously, but we're really trying to capitalize on some of the good that has come out of it. And like I said, the need to collaborate and work together as a team for teachers is really a strong message. And so to support in that co-teaching model, like I said, we have 3 days, but it's not just three days, that the trainers coming back throughout the entire year to meet regularly with these teams, and the principals are all on board, because we said we can't run this without your support for these teachers. So if they need planning time, if they need additional resources, that they are given those. And all of the elementary principals were absolutely on board with that, and some are attending the training. And I would say there's a huge group from Pine Grove who are on board with this, and really kind of setting the stage, and hopefully that will be our model school, and while others are coming into the fold as well.
Right. Because this will be a great model to have across every subject area if this works well.
Yep. A lot is weighing on this. Believe me, I know.
Well, we have some great educators, and I think they'll do a great job.
I do too.
Any other questions?
So can we just confirm, so that as far as we just said ESSER funding here. So obviously, you know, we had ESSER 1. ESSER 1's gone and done right now. And then ESSER 2 is the 900 some odd $1,000 that we have on the table currently that we haven't spent down. And then ESSER 3 is the 1.9 million that we haven't even thought about applying for yet. So ultimately, this likely will be a priority within ESSER 3. We've got to do some survey of constituents and all of that. So I no doubt this would be a priority of the committee, of administration, of every teacher, and I'm sure parents and students. But for now, in the interim, because we haven't applied for that, this would be backfilled through ESSER 2 funding. Obviously, we haven't spent that down nearly anywhere near entirely yet either. So just to make sure that that was clear, we say ESSER, but there's lots of pots of funds that Kyle's trying to keep track of and figure out. And that's,
Okay.
we'll be spending more time talking about that because that is certainly quite different than the first round of relief, where plans and updating every 6 months and hoops upon hoops upon hoops to jump through. So,
Okay. The next item on the agenda is transitioning to board doc.
okay. So just to confirm on that, just to make sure, if you all wanted to take a vote, that's fine. You don't need to take a vote. That's fine to move on. Mostly we wanted to bring this to you. We didn't want to be spending grant funds outside of a budget process where we didn't have a discussion. So clearly everyone's supporting of that, which is great. But just to clarify that, Board Docs is a meeting, I'm making this up, a meeting management platform. It's actually been around for quite a few years. MASC partnered with Board Docs, I think a couple of years ago now. So when we contract with Board Docs, it actually is a contract that's written through MASC. It is designed to generate and manage meetings with agendas electronically. So rather than a paper PDF that's sent out that you then have to scroll through, you know, those of you who are looking at it electronically, it actually is a web-based portal that allows you to click on each agenda item. We could embed in videos with agenda items. We can embed the annexes. Minutes are then generated within the system, posted right back with the meeting in the archiving of the whole system. So that is, in working with Linda and Narissa, this was something we started prior to May and continued after May, that we agreed to move us to Board Docs. We are moving towards Maureen Dunleavy, not Heffernan, and Sandy Susie have been trained on the system for minuting, and Maureen more extensively for the generation and management of the agendas. We are moving towards August 25th as our first agenda that gets posted. That will be contingent on making sure we can get the links embedded correctly in our website so that it's very clear. Or maybe it's something we post traditionally and then also run this in tandem for the first month or so. But in talking with Linda, I just wanted to make sure that everyone was up to date with that, moving to an electronic format. You know, we did it because of this, the Brady Bunch Zoom screen, but even when we move back in person, it would allow us to have a much more efficient training. Some of the packets, as you know, depending on the time of year, can be 100 pages, 200 pages or more. So this will allow us to have, you know, with devices at the table, having an electronic meeting and moving in that direction. So did you want more, Linda? I know you wanted to just have the discussion and make sure people were
Aware of it, yeah. Because it's just looking at the policy manual and how we update those and move them across to MASC, then back to us. Things get lost in it. This will definitely will allow a seamless transition of policies.
Mhm.
Does anybody have any questions? Paul Lees?
Of course he does. So that means I'm not getting a paper copy anymore, Brian.
So I'm not the boss here. Y'all are the bosses. You get to decide.
No, that's not the case. You and Linda are the bosses, apparently. You're making these decisions to change the protocol of the committee without even addressing it to the committee members. So you are the boss. But go ahead.
Wasn't my decision, but.
No.
it- the
Let
ability-
me just say, Paul, we're going to be going to this on August 25th to see how we transition and like it, but it is the way of the future, and it's an easier way to transit information more cleanly.
in-
I don't know if,
Do we operate as a committee, or is this just decisions that are made by the chair and the vice chair?
we are a committee, but we have to present it and then try it out to see how we all like it. We can't present it and say that we're going to do it without everybody agreeing to it. But at some point, Paul, we have to present it and then try it. So the only way to try it is to do it in a meeting to see how it's going to work. Do you not agree with that?
I don't. So Brian, we're going to have devices with us in public when we go on the 25th. Is that it?
That would be yeah. And again,
We're all going to have Chromebooks again?
those that don't want one, and then some people that didn't want one, but if you want one, we can absolutely get you one. Yeah.
How can you follow the agenda during a meeting without a Chromebook in front of you at a public meeting?
With the board docs,
Yeah, with what you're proposing.
it would be, I mean, a Chromebook or another device. Other people have chosen to use their own devices, didn't like Chromebooks, but you would need a device, or it does have the ability to download the agenda and print off. So we would have the ability to do that. It wouldn't look the same, right, as it does when we format it within a Google Doc and that whole way. But we would have the ability to produce a paper copy of those as well.
Okay, and so one of my primary concerns with wanting a paper copy, besides the fact that it's easy to use, is also the fact that it makes Brian and his team get everything together 48 hours before a meeting. And I'm concerned that if we go electronically, that whole rule is going to go by the boards. And we're going to be submitted things in annexes under the to be provided. And we're going to be, I know you're shaking your head no, Brian, but this is an easy segue into it. And that's what my concern is, okay? It's been a long-standing concern of people who have gotten off the board like Dina Sullivan, that we get annexes long after the time the meeting is posted. And we are forced to literally read annexes in the course of a meeting. And I don't think that makes for good school committee meetings. And that's one of my concerns.
Yep, no, I appreciate the concern. I guess I would say to you now, 5 years, 1 month and 3 days into my tenure as superintendent, that has not been the norm. Has it happened? Of course, there are times that things change last minute, and certainly last year was a banner year for getting information 5 hours before a meeting. But this wouldn't change anything about the process. Right now, we deliver an agenda or post an agenda on Friday afternoon. We would post it exactly the same time, exactly the same way. The difference is, rather than, if it's a big agenda and it's a 194-page PDF document, it's a link, it takes you to the agenda, and each of the items is clickable, and you click on it and the annex is associated with each of the agenda items. So it's a way to organize it and manage it electronically. It doesn't change the expectation, nor should it change your expectation that the annexes are posted and published, I guess is the right word, with the agenda on the Friday before meeting, as it always is. That won't change.
And so with regard to, and I guess one other question I had is there any reason why this wasn't given to us in a document form, like beforehand? Like, we got a lot of information about the math specialist. Is there a reason we didn't just get anything other than, your introduction and Windows rubber stamp?
There isn't a document. It's a web-based system. I could send you links of other districts that are using it. I mean, you could just search up FMAC, but I can send you a list of school committees, town boards, and that are using the system, and you can play around and see it. But there really isn't a document that would share anything of substance with you.
And so if somebody is coming remotely into a meeting, they'll need 2 devices. Would you agree with that in order to follow the meeting?
Different tabs in a browser. It depends on, different people like different things. Some people like mobile devices, some people like computers, but it would be a tab in a browser, whether you're a Chrome or a Safari or a Windows Explorer, Internet Explorer, like any of those, it would just be one more tab, and you could have the meeting in a tab and the the agenda in another tab, or some people, I tend to be a 2-device kind of person and have a mobile device with the agenda. And you don't need to be on the agenda to be seeing the meeting, right? So if we're meeting remotely, in this case, the agenda could be on the same screen, but it doesn't have to be. It's not, the meeting wouldn't be part of, I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly. The meeting wouldn't be broadcasting through the board docs system. It'd be separate tabs, pages.
And how
And
many,
even now, if somebody joins the meeting, they can go on and they can print out the agenda. You can still print the agenda out, which is what they have to currently do now.
and how many districts in the state are using this board doc? You said that it has the stamp of MASC, but how many districts are actually using this?
I don't know the exact number.
Do you have any sense whether a minority or a majority are using it?
I would say, I don't know if I would use the minority or a majority, because I think that assumes an exact number. I would say there's a significant number of examples of districts within the state across the country. This is not a Massachusetts exclusive thing. The woman who's trained us is, I think she's from Atlanta. So this is being used by boards and councils and committees across the country, but quite a few in Massachusetts. Yeah.
What is the cost associated with this program?
$5,000 a year.
5,000?
Per year. Yeah.
Was that in the budget?
I mean, there's committee costs, there's other costs. Was there a line item in the budget prior to this? No, it was not.
And Linda, I'll stop soon, Narissa. I see your hand waving, but I just have all these things falling out of my brain and I want to say them. Linda, is this going forward on a temporary basis or is this a permanent basis?
Oh, we're going to start using it on August 25th, and we'll see how it goes from there.
Doesn't really answer my question. Go ahead, Narissa, your turn.
Linda, may I?
Yes, you may.
So I just wanted to say this from the other side, because I don't believe that most committee members kind of have this experience, and I don't want to kind of keep it to myself. The process of putting together an agenda and then having the meeting and then doing the minutes afterwards and then kind of all the follow-up that comes along with it. The meeting is when you look at it as a whole, it's one small thing. And especially last year where we were meeting so often, I can tell you, Brian and I had lists running upon lists of things that needed to be handled at different meetings. And then Maureen Dunleavy would kick in and do a lot of the formatting and the organization piece of it. And then those were actually going out. And then there was all the minutes that needed to be done and followed up on. And in some cases, they were having multiple people were working on those projects. And I do respect that the committee should have some input in this, but the overall process that will be done in this system, including policies, is so much bigger than what you're experiencing in one meeting. And again, all due respect to the committee, I think it has to be a broader discussion. And part of this, just a piece of this, even if we go and everybody says we print it out, right? Part of it is the ease, right? And the efficiency and taking the hard work, the hardest part of the work that goes with putting together the agendas and getting the minutes and getting all of the follow-up work done and making it so that the people in the office can do what they are supposed to be doing and aren't spending unbelievable amounts of time on this, and also making sure that when the chair and the superintendent and whoever else is weighing in on what is included in agendas, these can be literally built as they go. So instead of the running list that Brian and I tried to have last year to try and make sure that everything got covered, and we did miss things, you can actually sort of begin building all those agendas in advance so that there's not this, oh my gosh, did we catch this? Or I forgot that, or is this supposed to go in this agenda or next agenda? What did we decide? Those are getting done as part of that process that you're going through. It's happening real time as you're figuring all that out, rather than trying to kind of go through the thinking process and the lead up to it, and then all of a sudden having to come up with that final document and make sure that everything's included there. So I just wanted to say, like, just from my perspective, this is so much bigger than the piece that the committee experiences. And
Thank you,
I don't want to negate either the value of being able to control our own policies, because that was definitely a big thing.
Paul, you have any other questions?
No, I need a Chromebook for the meeting on the 25th. And the 19th, I guess.
Okay.
Will be the DCC. They won't be in board docs. So that's just the presentation on the facilities assessment. Does anyone else need or want? I mean, anyone need a Chromebook? Susanna, want one? Okay.
Yes, please. I am banned from Google at the moment on my work laptop. We got hacked.
Excellent. IT. Okay.
My kids kicked me out of my Chromebooks, and no one can get back into them currently.
Oh.
Yeah. So I might need to borrow one until I can go to a Google store.
I'll circle back and we'll connect with each of you just to see where you're at, what you need for a device, and make sure that we get you a functioning one and take any bricks back. Yes. Oh.
I just have a weird, I can still print off of board docs, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I could print before the meeting
Yep.
and still have it with me and follow along if I didn't.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I think that
Probably don't need anything then if I can just print it, move forward.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
I'll connect with each of you and you can let me know how you want to proceed.
Okay, I'll send out an email to everybody to see what they're going to need for the 25th.
Okay.
Is there any other questions on board docs? Okay, the next item on the agenda is the executive session. The school committee is expected to go into executive session for the purpose of planning for and conducting negotiations with union personnel, specifically the local association of federal, state, county, and municipal employees, the AFSCME bargaining unit, and then we'll be returning to open session.
I'll make a
Okay.
motion. I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of planning for and conducting negotiations with union personnel, specifically the local association of federal, state, county, and municipal employees, AFSCME bargaining units, to return to open session.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Susanna,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Paul Lees,
Yes.
Narissa,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well.
All right. We are back in open session. And we are recording.
Okay. We have come to an agreement with the AFSCME contract. Brian, if you'd like to give a summary.
Yes, so we have two units that we have come to agreement with, the custodians and the head custodians. There are several language changes that we've made and agreed, a lot of it boilerplate, updating contracts with laws and other various procedures and regulations. We should probably take these as they're two separate units, so we should take these as, I'll go over one and you can take a vote, and then I'll go over the other and you can take a vote. For the Unit A head custodians, in essence, it's a one-year deal. There's an agreement at the end of the first year of the 1 year to have job descriptions developed, because we don't currently have them. It is a 2% COLA, and there is a $1,000 stipend in recognition of the extraordinary work that they did last year. So in essence, aside from all the language and semantics, that's the agreement that we landed at.
Okay. Can we get a motion to vote to approve a one-year contract as presented in the MOU?
We'll make that motion
Can
for
we
the
have a
head
second?
custodians.
I was gonna say for Unit A head custodians.
Okay. Could we have a,
Second motion.
I'll second it.
okay, we'll then have a roll call vote. Susanna,
Yes,
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Pauline,
Yes,
Narissa,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well.
All right, and so the second is Unit B custodians, literally boilerplate, same contract. There's a couple changes with regard to the times that custodians are covering for head custodians. But the same compensation is in play. With there, we did more of a correction on the salary grid in the first year, a 1-year agreement. It's in essence a 2.5% increase, with also adding one additional step and some language about movement within the steps for new hires. Also then had the $1,000 stipend in recognition of the work they did last year, and an agreement that within the confines of this 1-year agreement that we would have job descriptions fully intact with a successor agreement 1 year. And this is retroactive July 1st to June 30th, 22.
Okay, could we have a motion to vote to approve the 1-year contract as presented in the MOU?
I will make that motion for unit, AFSCME Unit B, the custodians.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote. Suzanne,
yes,
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Pauline,
Yes,
Narissa,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. The next item on the agenda is correspondence. I would like to acknowledge the receipt of correspondence from a group of district parents in regard to the requirement for mask wearing, and it will be filed in the public record. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
make a
Make a
motion.
motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry, Paul Lees, go ahead.
No, that's okay. All good. I'll second it.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Suzanne,
yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Pauline,
Yes.
Narissa,
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Thank you and have a good night.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.